and welcome to A Seat at the Table, a show to keep you connected and informed about what's happening in our state government and the great city of Lansing. I'm State Representative Sarah Anthony, and it is my honor to represent your voice in the state capitol. The focus of today's episode is our very own Lansing School District and the many pathways to success it provides for students in our community. Joining us on this show, we have Executive Director of the Lansing Promise, Justin Sheehan, and the Lansing School District President, Gabrielle Lawrence. Both of our guests are dedicated to improving opportunities and educational outcomes for students right here in Lansing. And I can't wait to hear about what they have to say and how many great things are happening in our district. Justin, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, what were we doing on Valentine's Day?
We were passing out, or maybe I should say we went and picked up 1,284 donuts.
Yes.
And 1,500 Valentines that we all had printed for all of our teachers. Because what we found out, and what we've really come to conclude, is that without our teachers, the future of our babies is not the same. And our teachers shape and mold our students, who are all of our future Promise Scholars, and we just wanted to thank them. And so we had a campaign for a couple of weeks called Love Lansing Teachers, and we really ultimately had the privilege, and you joined us in doing that, in dropping off donuts to every teacher in the district.
It was the best way to spend a very cold, very early morning, was to hang out at my old high school, Everett High School, also at Sexton, and it was just an amazing experience to thank our students and our teachers. So thank you for the opportunity to partner.
Absolutely.
So you are with the Lansing Promise. So what is the Lansing Promise?
The Lansing Promise is a combination of both an idea and an actual organization. So the idea came actually in 2001 with something called the Hope Scholarship. The Hope Scholarship, simply put, was to identify young people who could use some financial assistance in doing something after high school, right? In this case of going to Lansing Community College. That idea from 2001 up until 2012 worked. What we found, and actually some legislation that came through, created a Lansing Promise Zone Authority. So the Michigan Promise Zone Act created authorities across the state, 10 to start, all with above average poverty and below average graduation rates. Lansing's 78% free and reduced lunch. So the reality is a lot of our kids and their families have some kind of financial limitations, but it doesn't change any of their abilities. And so folks said, well, what happens if we begin to remove the financial barriers to post-secondary success? So in 2001, Hope. In 2012, Lansing Promise. Lansing Promise is what we call a place-based scholarship for every kid that lives in schools within the Lansing School District boundaries. So if they live from 9th through 12th grade within the Lansing School District boundaries, if they go to a high school within the Lansing School District boundaries, public, private, home, charter, and GED, if they want to move forward after that, they are then eligible for a scholarship at Lansing Community College, Michigan State University, or Olivet College.
And this is unique, right, about Promise Zones, is that it's not merit-based, right? So the high-flying students, the A-plus students, and it's also not need-based, right? But it is place-based. So just because you are in our community, you have access to this amazing resource. I think that's powerful.
I think it is, and and we talked about in the very beginning, it's an idea. We believe in the inherent value and worth of every young person in this city, and so we as a community invest accordingly. And then that's really been the underpinning of all of this, right? Looking in the eyes of every young person in this city. So we get to, for example, do something called the Promise Pledge, which is working with every 6th grader in the district in 11 or 12 schools. We go in every year, and we simply get to tell these babies that what you do matters, and who you are matters, and who you become matters. And we always make these statements, and they always, of course, get involved, right? We do a little call and response, and what you do matters, and who you are matters, and they get real loud because they're in 6th grade. And there's an adult yelling, so it's fun. And who you become matters. And then it always gets quiet. And then we ask an important question. And it matters to who? And there's always one brave little boy or brave little girl who says it matters to my mom, to my dad, to my grandma, to my aunt, to my pastor, to my teacher, right? To my brothers and sisters, right? Because this actually has nothing to do with a scholarship. It's a scholarship. We're reducing financial barriers. We've invested more than $2.6 million in the last 7 years into what we call gap-filling scholarships. So state and federal aid go first, and we fill in the gap. But this isn't really about scholarships. It's about bringing hope and bringing opportunity to young people who have the ability and just need to know their inherent value and worth.
That's right.
And so there's an entire community that's begun to rally before they even knew these babies, right, to raise funds, starting in 2001 and coming up through that. We've raised funds enough to put every kid that has applied and been accepted in. We are 1,300 scholars in right now.
Wow. Wow.
And these kids are unbelievable.
And what the Promise has done, even, you know, obviously I grew up here,
Yeah.
it has started to create a college-going culture in
That's
our
right.
community. That
That's
the
right.
expectation is that, you know, high
That's right.
school is the first step, right? That
That's
whether
right.
you are going straight into the workforce, you still need additional credentials and
That's right.
skills, right? Or
That's
if you're
right.
going to a 2 or 4 years. Kids, sixth graders, even younger, are starting to have an expectation
That's right.
that college is for us, right? Regardless
exactly right.
of income and whether your parents
right.
went, so it's powerful. Now, you are clearly very passionate about this work,
Yeah.
and you're the executive director, which I don't
Right.
know if I mentioned, but what drew you to this work? What drew you to become the executive director of our Promise?
It's a good question. So I'm born and raised in Lansing as well. Went to a couple of different schools, including Verlinden Elementary. We then moved to Waverly, which still has a Lansing mailing address. And I've had a Lansing mailing address except for 4 years of my life when I was at East Lansing, at MSU campus. This city is not only in my blood, but it is how I define myself. The opportunity came up going on 5 years ago now, in which the first executive director was to be hired of a program or a concept that would raise funds for kids' futures. I threw my hat in knowing that I would not get the job, and somehow I still did. So that's either grace or foolishness. You guys can be the deciding factor on that. The board since then has grown significantly. It has strengthened, and we have become, by the support of this community, a driving force in the conversation around the fact that our young people do matter, that who they are matters, and that ultimately we have an interest in not only building talent, which is very important, right, but building whole kids. Because strong families and strong communities, right, build safety and build security and make sure that babies have a roof over their heads and food and clothes and shelter. And if we as a community are comfortable with a large percentage of our young people in poverty, then we've got a problem.
That's right. That's right. And what do you think some of the biggest barriers are for our students, right? Either, what do you think some of those barriers are?
Sure. So I mean, we know that there are physical barriers, right? We've all got risk factors, number one, but there are physical barriers. Some babies don't know where their next meal is. Some of our babies only have 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch, right? So there are programs working to address that, right? But reality is that economic development starts in the home. And so if our families are not taken care of, parents can only give what they got. Speaking as a dad of 3, I can only give what I got. When I'm having a stressful day or week or month or year, I'm that much less of a father. And so these are some realities I think we all need to begin to understand. So one, we as a community need to begin to support our families more, right? We need to begin to support our men and keep our men in our communities, right? Every act of a young man is condoned by an older male, right? So we need examples and we need role models that are positive and life-giving. Beyond that, though, I think you made an important statement earlier, actually, which is about expectation. So Wes Moore, executive director of the Robin Hood Foundation, has done a ton of work in first-gen college-going culture and reducing the culture shock. Wrote a book called The Other Wes Moore. Long story short, Wes Moore, the author, in the same newspaper article was noted as in the same newspaper, noted as a Rhodes Scholar. The other Wes Moore, who is named in this book, was up for felony murder. They began a relationship, they began a conversation, began to interview, and they built a very trusting relationship over the years. Wes Moore, the author, asked Wes Moore, who was then doing some time, Wes, are we products of our environment? And Wes very, very wisely said, no, we're products of our expectations.
That's right.
And those aren't just internal expectations, though our young people need them. They're expectations that we have, that our police have for our kids, that our teachers have for our kids, that our pastors have, that we as adults who have never met some of these young people have. And what we're beginning to see is as young people understand that there's a community that cares and believes, our retention and persistence rates, for example, in post-secondary education, are 20 to 30% higher than anywhere in the nation right now.
Wow. Wow. And I mean, our promise does seem like a model. I mean, we talked about that there are 12 kind of designated promise zones that have been state designated throughout the state. And I know that we are kind of a shining star. So before we actually wrap up, because we just don't have a lot of time on our show, but tell us a little bit about our big event happening here in mid-Michigan.
Sure. This will be our 6th annual dinner. It is called the Promise Dinner. It'll take place at the Don Johnson Fieldhouse, which some folks know as the Eastern Fieldhouse.
That's right. That's right.
We did it there last year. Believe me when I say we will flip it a bit. We have had some pretty incredible dinners over the years, but what we found is this: it's actually not about the dinner, right? But it is about our kids.
That's right.
It is about bringing K through 12 and post-secondary and our business leaders all together in one room and under one banner, saying that we believe in our young people and in the future, that we rise together,
That's right.
right? Or we all fall apart. And so we've seen business continue to invest in this program. And we've seen teachers continue to invest in these babies. And we've seen our young people and our scholars who are now becoming our young professionals. Some of our scholars already have their JDs, their Juris Doctorates, and will be sitting for the bar soon.
And one thing
Some
I
are
love
in med
about
school.
the dinner is that you highlight the students.
That's
is
right.
that these are students who are our best and brightest, and just they're wonderful. So
right.
I plan on being there. I think it's
Excellent.
a wonderful event. Where can people go to find more information about the Lansing Promise?
LansingPromise.org. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and even Instagram.
I know you're on Instagram. I follow you.
That's new. We have scholars on staff who know what they're doing. Let's be clear.
I love the Promise. Thank you for your work. Your passion shines through, and for many students who have already received the Promise, and for those who are going to receive the Promise, thank you for everything you do. So,
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. So thank you for joining us, and we will have a short break, so stay tuned for a discussion with the school board president, Ms. Lawrence, so we can learn more about the exciting developments happening in the Lansing School District. We'll be back.
How will 2020 census data be used? Where there are more people, there are more needs for public services. That's why the census is used by the government to inform funding decisions each year. But that's not all. It's also used by nonprofits to inform services, by businesses to create jobs, and even by students for school projects. Understanding how the population changes helps us shape communities across the country for the better. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
Welcome back to A Seat at the Table. My next guest is our very own Gabrielle Lawrence, who was recently elected as president of the Lansing School District. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us about your journey to the Lansing School District, or the Lansing School Board. So I know that you are a proud Big Red.
I am a proud Big Red. I graduated from Sexton in 2000. We're going to let you be an honorary Big Red.
I'm okay being a Viking, but it's okay.
All right.
It's all right.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So how'd you even get interested in serving on the school board?
So I've always loved the Lansing School District and been passionate about the Lansing School District, and have always felt that I want every single kid in our district to have the same experience that I did, where I felt valued and included, and I felt like a member of a family. So anything I can do to make sure that all of our students have that experience is something that I'm absolutely happy to do.
And I think that the school board is the hardest elected position that anyone could ever hold, right? I think people are very passionate about education in their schools, and you do a really good job. So I'm glad that you're leading the charge.
It's an honor.
Yes. So everyone has been talking about the Flex Academy at Eastern. Tell me about this. This has even gotten national attention. So touch a little bit on it.
I would love to. So typically when you think about a high school day, that day starts at about 8 o'clock in the morning and goes until about 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We have really flipped the script on that. So we have a group of students who are starting their day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and ending at about 7 o'clock p.m. So they're able to have those classes, to have that high school experience, just second shift, if you will. So for kids who want to work during the day or have family or other responsibilities, this is really an excellent option for them, as well as for teachers teachers might have young kids at home and they want to stay at home during the day, and they can instead shift their work schedule to be those later hours of the day.
This is so amazing. It's so innovative. We talked even about how the Promise Scholarship is very innovative. I just feel like Lansing is a place that people have an appetite to do things a little bit differently in order to serve our students who sometimes are just very unique.
That's
So,
exactly what we do in the Lansing School District. We offer unique programming and things that you're not going to find in surrounding districts. So if you look at our schools, they're now organized into pathways. And your student can choose a pathway that's really tailored towards any interest that they have. So some of my favorites are the Chinese immersion, Spanish immersion, biotechnology, and insurance industry pathways that we offer. When you think about insurance, for example, you probably don't think of a lot of high school students getting fired up and passionate about insurance. But if you look at our Lansing economic situation, we have big employers that are insurance companies. So if we can help kids graduate with some background in that insurance industry, then they're going to have a natural pathway to go in and get a fulfilling career.
yeah. And I feel like Lansing Schools has always been a little nimble in that way. I mean, when we were growing up, was it the LAMP program or partnerships with General Motors? I mean, we've always kind of looked at the local economy and seen how can we prepare our students to fit into what's now and then what's next. So
Absolutely,
yeah,
and we just now have tailored that to really reflect what's needed in the workforce in 2020.
Yep. Yes, I love that. I love it. So I know you probably get asked all the time about the bonds. So tell us a little bit. So bonds recently passed. Just tell us all of it.
So in the last 4 years, we've passed 2 major bonds in the Lansing School District, and one of them is the Pathway Promise Bond. So that bond really went to retrofitting buildings in order to accommodate different or expanded grade levels, and then we passed a bond about a year and a half ago it's called a sinking fund. And I was the chair of that committee, so that I know everything that you could ever want to know about the sinking fund, and I won't bore you with those details. But what those dollars allow us to do is to really go back and address some deferred maintenance that we had throughout the district. We're also able to use some of those dollars to increase security measures that we take in the district. For example, we're installing new security cameras at Pleasant View. So just things that we really need, needs that we've identified, gaps that hadn't been filled yet, we're now able to afford to go in there and plug those holes.
And I love our community because we step up and say our kids deserve the best. They
Exactly.
deserve the best buildings, the best teachers, the best facilities, all of those things. I feel like our community wraps itself around the district and says, you know, what can we do to help? So,
Absolutely. And Representative Anthony, I know you and I are both hometown girls, and we grew up in Lansing, love our community. And you and I know kind of exactly what you're talking about, that we envelop our district and envelop our kids and let them know that they're the best, they deserve the best, and we're going to give everything we can to make sure that they're successful.
That's right. That's right. What is your proudest moment or proudest accomplishment with the school board so far?
So it's that latest millage that we passed. It's that sinking fund, because I worked really hard on it. My husband, I also pulled him into the mix, so we were both really intimately involved with passing this millage. And it's not exciting projects for the most part. It's patching holes in roofs. It's filling potholes in parking lots. So it's not things that most people get fired up about, but I knew that that need was there. And if we didn't get support from the voters, that need was going to continue to pile up. And now we're getting about $7.5 million annually in revenue from that millage, and we're able to finally go in and reinvest that money.
That's amazing. And you were a champion on that. I remember getting emails from you back to back, so thank you for championing that. So
It was a great experience.
yeah, yeah. So what's ahead? What's ahead for the Lansing School District, you know, especially under your helm at the school board level? What can parents and teachers and students and even just community members who don't have kids, but just, again, are passionate, what's next?
So the biggest thing that we're working on right now is hiring a new superintendent. We're going to have a new leader in our district. At our board meeting this evening, we're going to start to narrow down the field of candidates that we have, and I'm really excited about finding that next leader for our district. And I know that the right fit is in that pool of applicants that we have. We just need to help that person come into the forefront, and I'm very excited to see where that new leader is going to take us. Graduation will be here before we know it, so we'll have hundreds of kids walking across the stage that day and receiving their high school diplomas, and hopefully they take advantage of that Promise Scholarship and they're able to go on to college or career readiness or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I always cry at graduation. It's my favorite time of year. It really is. I'll be there. I don't even have anybody I know that's graduating.
That's okay.
I'll just be there.
You're invited.
So, as you know, I brag about Lansing all the time. At the state capitol, across the country. You probably brag about the school district. If you could name one thing that makes our Lansing schools just super special, right? So when I'm doing my hashtag Love Lansing, what makes Lansing schools just unique?
Oh, that's such a great question because we have so many great offerings in the district. And I know I've talked about this already, but that Chinese immersion program, you're not going to find Chinese immersion anywhere else in the state of Michigan, I believe. We have such a strong partnership with the Confucius Institute at MSU. That Chinese immersion program is at Post Oak, which is a wonderful building. It's packed to the gills. We also have free Montessori programming, and that's so popular that we had to expand to a second building this year.
Oh, wow.
People love Montessori. I don't really know what it is because my kids aren't in school yet, but I know that people love it, and we're able to offer that programming to our kids as well.
I love it. I love it. I'm so happy that you're there, right? I think it's important for folks who are homegrown to, to be a part of the district, as well as folks who are bringing an outside perspective. So what did I miss? So of all the things that we've talked about, the bonds and the promise and Chinese immersion, is there anything else that you'd like our viewers to know about the Lansing School District?
Another huge thing that I would be remiss if I didn't mention, we increased our enrollment this year.
Ooh, love it.
That hasn't happened in 20 years.
Yeah.
It's been a long, long time.
What do you attribute that to?
I think people are recognizing that Lansing has offerings that nobody else has. Lansing has a Promise scholarship that nobody else has in this area. And I think people know the value of the dollar in the city. They know they're going to get a lot for their money when they live here. The cost of living is wonderful. And I think that people who have young kids are realizing, hey, we live in Lansing, and we want to really be a part of this community, and we're going to send our kids to these Lansing schools.
I love it. I love it. That's the dream. When we built the Promise, that was the dream, making it place-based to attract people here. I mean, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
You've been on the school board how many years?
5 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. 6-year terms.
6-year terms, but I was appointed to fill a vacancy, so I had about 2 years under my belt, and then I ran for election.
So we get you a while. We get you for a while. I love it.
You're stuck with me.
No, not we're happy that you're there.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
And if we need to learn more about the Lansing schools, where do we go to find more
We have a
information?
great website, lansingschools.net. We also have very active social media accounts, Instagram and Facebook in particular.
Excellent. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of A Seat at the Table. I'd like to thank our guests once more for their commitment to helping Lansing students thrive through graduation and beyond. To learn more about the resources we discussed on today's show, please visit lansingschools.net or contact my office. And as always, remember, love Lansing.